Hello, this is Simon Brew. I'm the editor of Film Stories magazine, and a very warm welcome to a very special episode of the Film Stories podcast.
Come with me.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And movies that had stories.
That the story just sucks them in.
This is just the beginning.
Stories. We would be honored if you would join us.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to Film Stories with Simon Brew. I am Simon Brew. As always, that's all you need to know about me. The aim of the podcast, though, is, as given away by the title, to tell the stories of films. And I tend to talk about development stories, production stories, marketing stories, release stories, all those ingredients that go towards making the films that we know and sometimes love. Just that, the films that we know and sometimes love. What you've happened upon here, though, is one of my occasional special episodes of the podcast where I bring in filmmaker or filmmakers, in this case, to talk about their latest movie or their body of work. A little bit of both in this particular instance. So I'm joined for this episode by the writers of the new film Wonka, which is playing in UK cinemas from the 8th of December. They are Simon Farnaby and Paul King. Paul King also directed the film, as well as Paddington and Paddington 2 and The Bunny and the Bull, where he worked with Farnaby, who co-wrote Paddington 2 and was involved in all of those other movies as well. A few little bits, a few notes really, just before I play you the conversation. I name-checked very briefly the film Phantom of the Opera, which I love an awful lot, that Simon Farnaby wrote, directed by Craig Roberts. That's available now on disc. Bunny and the Bull we talk about. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. We talk briefly about the film Top Secret, because Jim Carter, who is in Wonka, is also in Top Secret. Then there's producer David Heyman is mentioned. He also produced the Paddington films. Timmy is Timothy Chalamet, who plays Willy Wonka in Wonka. And then I've left, I usually edit these things out, but I just think the two of them were getting on in such a way that I thought it sounded a bit more natural just to leave them in. So you will hear a moment where Paul King's phone rings, and I kept that in, and also a bit where the people in the room check if we wanted any of this filmed. So this was done at the official London junket for the movie, and so you just get a little bit of that background in there as well. That's all you need to know going in. Mind you, that's quite a lot. You don't actually need to know much of that going in, but nonetheless, told you anyway, and I'm going to set up this conversation with a clip from the Wonka trailer. The other side of this, you'll be hearing from Simon Farnaby and Paul King.
So you're the funny little man who's been following me.
Funny little man? How dare you? I will have you know that I am a perfectly respectable size for an Oompa Loompa.
An Oompa what now?
In fact, in Loompa-land, I am regarded as something of a whopper. They call me Lofty.
Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to you all. My name is Willy Wonka. You see, I'm something of a magician. Prepare to be amazed.
Teapot.
Inventor. May I present Willy Wonka's wild and wonderful wishy-washy Wonka Walker? Please don't make me say that again. And chocolate maker.
The best chocolate in the world.
Ooh.
He's good.
Too good.
And anyone can afford them. Even
The poor?
And here comes that conversation, which, just as it was beginning, Simon Farnaby was giving me the giggles. I think I've edited around it. That was a clip from Wonka, and I am delighted to be joined for this Film Stories podcast special by returning guest Simon Farnaby, who specifically demanded to be on this podcast, no doubt, and by Paul King. Hello. How are you?
Pretty good, yeah. How are you?
I am still alive and still have a pulse. So I'm quite happy with those things.
You set your bar pretty low.
I do. I'm also very aware that just before me in this room was Simon Mayo. So now I'm like the third least successful Simon who's been in this room this morning. So it's that's where my. So I first learned
more self-loathing than I was expecting.
I think so. The first time I heard there was a new version of this happening was 2016, before U2 came along.
Gosh.
Where there were other scripts and other things being developed. So you two presume, I don't know how it happens. How do you get involved, and what I mean, what material are you given? Do you get a top secret folder, a PowerPoint presentation?
Well, I was finishing Paddington 2.
I have heard of this film.
Which was, I think, probably 2016-ish.
Yep.
And David Heyman, who produced that and is a sort of wonderful producer. And David's pretty good at making movies. So as we were finishing that, I was kind of nudging him going, any chance we could work together again, please? And he went, well, I do have an idea, as a matter of fact. I've only really got 2 words, young Wonka, and I thought that was very intriguing. And went back and read the book, and I, there was a huge amount I remembered about it, all the sort of crazy larger-than-life characters and the factory and the Oompa Loompa and all the things I loved. But I'd sort of forgotten how incredibly emotional it was. And it's really very moving, this story of Charlie and inheriting the factory. And I was sort of apprehensive because Roald Dahl's a genius, and I love the material as much as anyone, and all his stories. I sort of devoured it all. But when I saw he had that sort of remembered that combination of sort of heart as sort of Dickensian storytelling as well as these kind of big comedy set pieces, I thought that was the sort of thing that we like writing, and the opportunity to sort of stand on his shoulders was too delicious to refuse.
Yeah, Paul mentioned it to me in a taxi going somewhere, and he just went, "What if he turns up? Just the only idea I've got is he turns up penniless, with holes in his coat and but a bag full of chocolates, and sets up a little stall, and it's quite pathetic." And then I immediately went, "This could be great." Yeah, he's got a little rubbish flag with a W on it, and.
I love the fact one of you goes for the really formal answer and the explaining things, and you've gone to the back of a taxi with a rubbish bag.
This is how we work.
Yes.
Got this. This will be throughout this.
I keeps it real.
Are you going to use the visuals for this?
I'm not, no.
Okay.
I'm not.
This is all sound.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, stop looking good then.
Yeah, I can.
I took the liberty of just doing just that.
I can remove my posture lessons.
But it was in your head wanting to work with a producer again. That was kind of because I've heard a couple of people say this of David Heyman, that once you're kind of in and working with him, he is the kind of person who kind of protects filmmakers a little bit.
He's fabulous, and he's a very wise guide through the kind of world of making films, and not just sort of creatively, but also kind of practically, and how you can make these things. And he's got a real sense of what people want to enjoy in a cinema. Like, I think he's got a really good vision of that sort of thing, where it's quite easy to sort of, I think, spend years making something and then get to the end and go, I'm not sure anyone wants to see this. And David's got a real sort of a real sense of how audiences work and respond, and that's wonderful.
I mean, there is a quote from a film, "Pick all the flowers you can while you're still young," which might just be one of yours. And I just remember...
That's from Phantom of the Opera.
It is from Phantom of the Opera. I like the fact you didn't know that for a second.
Well, I didn't remember it at all.
I was wondering
I love
where
Phantom of the Opera. I love it.
It's great.
But I remember talking to you around the time of Phantom of the Opera, and you kind of had a plate of options, because there was the Disney live-action Pinocchio film that I think you dallied with just for a brief amount of time. There was obviously, you could have gone into Paddington 3, I would imagine, as director. This isn't going to be an interview about Paddington. I figure everyone else is going to hit you with lots of that. But for you to, to throw a quote that you said, Paul, you say you spend 10 minutes thinking about whether it's a good idea to do something, and then 5 years doing it. Now you've been through that process a couple of times. Are you far more conscious of that 5 years?
I think so, because Paddington, it was hugely labour intensive, and certainly the way I go about things, it's a sort of war of attrition, really. Of sort of, I just think making film is a 100 million tiny choices, and I sort of agonise over all of them, and I'm definitely aware of the workload that it entails, and what a sort of perfectionist I try to be, and
so you have to be careful,
choose carefully.
Yeah, who you spend your time with. Your writing partners.
That would certainly be something you would have thought I would think harder about.
But Paul doesn't like anything to be remotely like, you don't know.
I can't wait for the next one.
You never hear it. You never hear him say that'll do. And there's some directors, do, or not even bad, because they have to. They go, oh, that'll do. Paul will just go, well, he won't allow that to happen.
So you like the nicer version of Whiplash?
He's a nice Whiplash.
That's the quote in Whiplash, isn't it?
Again,
Just
do it again.
The worst phrase in the world is something like, that'll do.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. I think it's a great film.
It is a great film. I am not accusing you,
definitely
to be clear.
spoke to me of slapping anyone in the face.
No, you don't. He doesn't do it like that. He more slaps himself in the face.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's more what it's like.
Well, I don't often read in great depth the press notes you give them for stuff, but I did for these, and it's like it's a couple of thousand words of people being particularly lovely about you, Paul. There's one or two comments.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was any press notes. It's the first I've heard of it.
Your opinion wasn't sought out.
Yeah. But Patterson Joseph's quoted in there, and he says the thing about Paul King, it's the only thing I've ever quoted from press notes for an interview. The thing about Paul King is he's very astute, a visionary, strong, knows his mind, will not be swayed, knows how a scene should be, but he comes across like a cuddly bear. And so on the day when you're actually making the film, is it a case of you just present yourself as the calmest possible person, even though the inside is like raging with all these decisions?
Well, I think I do. I think I'm going to give a sincere answer, which is very dangerous.
I don't think Simon is, given the fact he's creased stuff.
I find it really hard to shoot films. It's so incredibly stressful, and we've spent year plus writing a script, and you've sort of got this one opportunity to get the scene right, and you've sort of got a sense of what it should be and how it should work, and I sort of find when I can't get that out, it's incredibly painful, and I think people are very, very tolerant around me and very generous to put up with my huge amount of self-loathing when I can't quite get it right. I really love working with the actors, because I think a lot of actors share those senses, because they're obviously used to being watched and aware of people watching, and it's a very difficult, vulnerable place to be. And if the people I most like working with are the people who will just do anything to try and get to the best possible place. And Patterson's a great example. Like he will try again, and he's it's inspiring.
And does it help that the two of you have each done a film that went down well but didn't find its audience? I mean, I'm a huge fan of Bill. There's Bunny and the Bull, of course. And the fact that you went through that early, does that kind of change anything when you're making a film? Does it? Are you conscious of that?
We're always conscious of these things, I think, and feel very. That's why I think. I mean, Bunny and the Bull. We both
need to lie down on a couch.
We both went through a lot.
Yeah.
With that, because really, but really, we didn't really. I mean, it was so early. I mean, Paul sort of wrote and directed that, and I sort of helped out, and obviously was one of the main characters. So I felt like I shouldered.
Yeah.
I was there with him, shoulder to the wheel, but. What was it, £600,000 to make that movie? And have you got it there?
It wasn't that much.
Wasn't
I think
even
it was
that.
$80,010. $81,010.
That it took.
Yeah.
Oh, that it took.
That's more than any film I've made's taken. So you're one up on me there.
Yes, I think you file it in the catastrophic failure pile, though.
But you learn a lot. We did learn a lot.
Thing,
learn a lot from it. We learned that we should really know what we're doing a bit more before we embark on A script, and B, shooting the script.
Yeah, I think it's very painful when something doesn't find an audience that you've poured your heart and soul into, and you want it to, you want people to see it in the first place, and hopefully have a positive experience watching it. And if either of those things don't come out, it's not a whole lot of fun.
Maybe that's why you drive yourself so hard through. I mean, this is really the couch, isn't it? We're on now.
Really
Maybe
is.
that's why you drive yourself so hard with these, so not to have another Bunny and the Bull. I mean, we do mention it quite a lot when we're writing.
Well, it's not a case of anyone. It's not a case of anyone dislikes the film, is it?
It's a much loved movie. Yeah, it didn't.
Well, it's a little loved.
It's a medium-loved movie.
If it were
medium-loved movie.
It's not as much loved like, say, Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Well, it's second place to Jurassic Park then.
Yes.
That's all right.
Yeah.
But it also makes us very grateful. Like Paddington 2 was so, one of the best reviewed films there's been. And that we remember that we were sat together in the old days before the internet. How did we get those reviews coming through for Bunny and the Bull?
The internet
we were
did
so
exist.
excited. It was just starting.
Days.
And we were going, oh, this isn't going well. And, and then Paddington 2 obviously was the opposite. And we were like, wow, this is great. And then you never, you always know there's a risk, because you can't just deliver something that everyone's going to absolutely love. That's not what it's all about.
No. You talked just before, you mentioned just before, it took you a year to write this. But it's such a basic question, but how do the two of you write? Are you in the same physical space? Are you shouting at each other, smashing stuff up?
We tend to. There was a bit of having to do Zoom because there was a bit of
the old COVID
around. But we're always best, the two of us physically in.
We're mostly together.
Yeah,
and we don't row at all, I don't think, which is very nice. And it's why it's the most pleasurable part of the process for me, because Simon's great to spend time with. And he's very funny. And so it's kind of the danger of spending time with Simon is that we sort of read the script out and we sort of improvise the scenes a lot. And by the time I come to sort of make them, I've already got Simon's voice so deeply ingrained in my head because I've sort of heard his version of all the lines. And it means I have to get incredibly brilliant actors, because otherwise you don't want to get a sub-Simon Farnaby. That would be very disappointing.
That's funny. Yeah, we do, and I mean we make each other laugh, and which is great. And also we have a sense of emotion, and we sort of, we'll try things, and we have ideas, but we kind of know when something hits and something is in the right zone of feeling, I suppose. Yeah. So we have that as well, which is nice.
One of the things about Phantom of the Open that particularly struck me, I remember talking to you about it at the time, is the tone of it, and how you absolutely nailed the tone of what could have been quite a cruel film. And absolutely wasn't. I'm responsible for 2 copies of that film being sold on Blu-ray in the Hale Zone branch of Asda. I just want to point out.
The only 2 copies that's sold worldwide.
3,
in
Asda. As well. In Asda, yeah. But in terms of the tone of something like this, I mean, clearly a different character, clearly a meritocracy somewhere, a belief in a meritocracy somewhere at the heart. But as a colleague of mine pointed out, if the tonally different version of this story with similar ingredients is Scarface, that you're breaking up a cartel of people selling an addictive substance. I mean, there is a different reading of the film. Not this one particularly. But how do you nail the tone of it? Because you've not got that sweet, innocent character at the heart that you had with the Paddingtons. With Willy Wonka, I always felt watching the 1971 film that there was just a little bit of an edge and an unease. And I don't think you resist that, really. I'm just wondering how hard that was to nail and what you were kind of going for. Not Scarface, to be clear.
We didn't go for Scarface, really, did we?
That's my clickbait exclusive.
We watched that and counted it out. But you are right to pick up on the cartel. I mean, that sort of made us laugh, that if we could have a sort of colourful, joyous chocolate version of this sort of, de facto mafia was a funny idea.
We were going to call it Capitalism for Kids, but it was kiboshed by the studio.
They preferred
very
Wonka.
Disappointing.
But I think to your point, like for us, it was sort of taking the right at the end of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I mean, yes, Gene Wilder is, and everyone says he's dark and he's, and there's twistedness and there's a lot of backstory to him pertaining to that, his bitterness and things that happened to him. But right at the end, he does the most joyous, wonderful thing. And we talked about it early on when Charlie puts the everlasting gobstopper back and he suddenly turns and he goes, "You did it, Charlie. You did it." And this smile comes across his face. And you go, that's the guy that we were sort of interested in, because I think that is Willy Wonka. Like he's searching for an heir and he's trying to wheedle out the bad ones. So he comes across in this way, but really he's trying to do an incredibly generous thing, which is to give over his chocolate factory to a kid.
And the bad characters are all greedy and the good characters are all generous. And what Charlie, obviously in the movie version, chooses not to take the everlasting gobstopper to Slugworth, and and he does an act of generosity where even Grandpa Joe's saying don't.
Yeah, and even as an audience, you're going, I can't believe I wouldn't have given that back, because he'd been so mean. You know what I mean? You're going, get out, being so nasty to him.
And it's and I think that's what Dahl was interested in, and I think that's what he was trying to express, really. Excuse me, I'm chiming.
that you?
Well, I think it is.
I thought you were the professional one.
Yeah, but I've messed up.
So sorry, Simon.
No, as we've discussed,
I can
I'm
only
the third most
apologise.
important Simon in the room. I know where I am.
I deeply
If the major
apologise.
international film director's phone's going off, I can't.
The question is, what do they want?
It's a busy day.
So, in terms of finding your Willy Wonka, though, in finding just nailing the character of it, because you said there that he's got that moment at the end. I know I read it in an interview again that he's got that moment at the end of the 1971 film, but he does these horrible things. I appreciate when we first meet him in your film, he's got none of that cynicism. It's the wide open. So you're kind of filling in the bit that leads to both parts of that.
Yes, I mean, I'm never quite sure. And maybe this was just my misreading, but when I sort of read the book, certainly as a child, I just thought Willy Wonka was the most wonderful person in the world. It's like this extraordinary magician wizard. And I wanted to go to the chocolate factory and I wanted to tour it with him. And it felt to me like he kind of gave these ghastly children enough rope to get into trouble. But he's not lynching them, it's their greed that gets them into trouble. You run into the room and you try to grab a squirrel and the squirrels will push you down the laundry chute, the rotten nut chute, and you sort of go, that's what happens. And Augustus Gloop drinks from the river when he's told not to, and he'll fall into the river, and it's really the children's bad qualities that get them into trouble rather than so I never really saw Willy Wonka as an avenging angel. I think he's somebody who's quite happy to let a nasty kid go through a pretty gruesome experience, but I don't think he's not the equalizer.
That would be interesting.
So we've got Scarface, we've got the Equalizer.
This has gone off.
But we do have him becoming. So he starts off very sort of naive and wide-eyed, and through Noodle teaches him some sort of streetwise cynicism, and of course the Oompa Loompa sort of teaches him, if you want to change the world, stand up for yourself, stand up to the bullies, and so he does get
right. And I think it's really because the Oompa Loompas in the book are really the kind of judgmental characters. Those sort of long songs they write where they sort of throw out your TV and replace it with a bookcase and those sort of things. They're very they feel like an authorial voice or the voice of what the reader's thinking as much as anything, but they're very sarcastic and biting and delicious. I mean, great fun. But they sort of get to carry that sort of cynical load so that Willy Wonka can still be Willy Wonka.
Because you're not shy about touching on that particular reading of the story of the earlier film. I mean, of course, it's existed lots of different. I mean, Tom and Jerry did a version at one point, which isn't bad actually. I quite like that. Yeah, it's not bad at all. You're supposed to go into all these things with cynicism. I sat watching
Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry did a
Willy Wonka.
And so, how?
Wow.
I mean, did you? I remember when you were doing Paddington. I think you said you snuck into 11 o'clock screenings in the morning of every kids' film and were writing down when people were laughing just to try and get
paid the price of admission.
No, fair enough. Let me. That's what the phone call was.
Yes,
Please, finally catching up with you. But how conscious were you of previous versions, and how conscious were you of where family cinema is now? Were you still doing that level of research before you were putting words down on paper?
No, I don't think I was watching family films with quite as sort of compulsively as I was doing Paddington, because I think that was really about sort of immersing myself in as many sort of and watching films with children in that way. And I suppose now I'm fortunate enough to have a child. I do a lot of that for recreational purposes anyway, and obviously we've done a lot through Paddington, both of the Paddingtons, and learned a lot doing that. But I think we were obviously highly aware of the versions that had gone before, and we sort of chose to try and make this a companion piece to the 71 movie, because obviously the Tim Burton version's wonderful and it's got some great things, but it also does quite a lot of Willy Wonka backstory, which sort of wouldn't really sit so comfortably with a different Willy Wonka backstory, or it felt like that would be very tricky. And I think also because we're the age we are, that Gene Wilder version is very
sort of fell in love with that at the same sort of time, really, and that's the one that sort of resonated, and all the, like you say, like the ending is being an example of the sort of feeling the same things and going that sort of that's just our touchstones of laughter and emotion and the songs as well, you know.
On the songs, I mean, I spoke to someone who wrote a Muppets film once. I'm a huge fan of the Muppets, but they were talking about the process of screenwriting that. It's almost you have to stop your script and say, there is going to be a 3-minute song here that's got to do this, this, and this, and take us from there to there. Now, if I've got this right, you started off writing some lyrics for songs yourself before passing that job on. But how did you? I mean, how did you approach that? How did you work out where you wanted the music in and what you wanted the songs to achieve? Because that's new to the both of you in features, anyway.
Yes, I mean, we'd used sort of music in the Paddington films. Obviously, there's the Calypso band, and they sort of vaguely comment on what's going on through the songs, but the songs already existed, and it was sort of more of a soundtrack. This is much more of a kind of, we stopped for a song, and I think we could have written that, but I think we felt a sort of responsibility as writers writing a script that's going to be read to at least put something down that vaguely rhymed and sort of had a rhythm. And I think because Roald Dahl does so much of that in all of his books, but especially in Charlie, that that we felt it would be fun to kind of to try, and it became a springboard that Neil entirely dismantled. And started
well, because we knew we had Neil Hannon, who we were both big fans of, we actually would write lyrics to his songs, so like songs of love, like, for example, and we'd send them to him and go, this is the sort of thing we're thinking of, but obviously not that song, because we wanted, sort of going to be an original song. And then he would write his own brilliant sort of version of what we had sort of suggested. But I think
we go back and forth a lot, wouldn't we? It was a very iterative process, because obviously with each draft of the script, the kind of brief of the songs would shift a little bit, and you sort of go, well, we don't need that in the song because we've done that in dialogue and we like this joke, but actually this bit we don't like. Is there any way we can handle that in the song? And we sort of tend to do lots and lots of different passes on the script to sort of keep on honing it, and so the music had to shift at the same time, and also we discovered that Neil could do things in the song, express things much more elegantly, that you go, well, we don't need that in any of this scene now because you got that verse.
I mean, for example, Sweet Tooth, which is one of my favourites, like, and this is so we just go, this could be an area where there could be a song. Like, we didn't sort of go, and we knew vaguely where they might come in the movie, and I think Sweet Tooth was, we were like, this could be a song where they're persuading him to, do the dirty on Willie and sort of, get a bit strong arm him and stuff. And then, did we write something for that? I'm not sure we did. I think Neil just went, how about this? And it was like Sweet Tooth, and it was based around, have you got a sweet? And we just like, that was perfect for us, loved it.
I mean, Paul, you've kind of hinted before there that you're I'm loath to use the word perfectionist, but you're very tight on what you're looking for. When you're working with a song element as well, and you can't complete the script until you've got that in place, and likewise, presumably you have to lock this script pretty tightly down if Warner Brothers is going to pay for 50 sets to be constructed or something.
Gosh,
I was reading
probably a lot.
So I mean, did the process alter really? Was it a case of you were locking down as close as you could before production began?
I mean, I think that's probably always the way for me, because I'm so anxious about making the film that I sort of want to know as much as possible, because there's still so much that will come up on the day that doesn't come out how you want it to. So we always try to be very precise, but at the same time, you have to be sort of flexible enough to know all those plans are going to go out the window, especially when you start working with actors and who are going to bring their own qualities to it, and that some lines you write are going to work and others aren't, and they'll say things that were funnier than anything you ever thought of, and so it's quite organic, but we try to have a very, very solid framework to build from in the first place. But I think especially with a musical, you sort of go, some of those sequences, like the You Never Had Chocolate Like This, sort of big sort of set piece in the middle, and it's shot probably across 20 different sets, and you sort of go, well, you've got to have a beat of the song that's going to see you all the way through it and know pretty precisely what everything's going to do. So I think for the songs it was probably more precisely choreographed than for the dialogue scenes, where there's a bit more flexibility.
Do the two of you enjoy this? Strange basic
like
question. No, I don't mean talking to me, but I just mean, but do you, I mean, is there a part of the process that you particularly enjoy? Because, I mean, the writing sounds fun. The making of it sounds absolutely hell. from where I sit in. But is there a point, 40-somethings are terrible at this, is there a point where you can sit back and actually think, yeah, do you know what, that was really good. I'm really pleased with that.
Well, I mean,
we're very, very different people.
We are, yeah. But I mean, Paul's got all the hard work of the directing. So I which I can see, like, I go, that must be hard. So I get the sort of fun bit, which is writing. I mean, we do have a lot of fun writing, and in a way, the early bits are sort of the most fun, to answer your question specifically. Yeah. Like coming up with the story, getting excited by, like Scrubbit and Bleacher and what they could do. And I remember when we had the idea for the scene with the Lederhosen and the sort of where they come together, and like we really enjoyed that and went, oh, this is great. This is a kind of like a 12th Night thing, and he's got his cross garters, and that's when it's at its most fun, and we're both throwing out lines that they could say, and often those most fun bits of writing end up being your cornerstones of what you sort of build around. So, and that is a lot of fun, and then it slowly gets less fun.
Yeah, I think there's good bits all the way through.
Yeah.
Like the rehearsals are great fun, and sort of putting the first cut together is really good fun. But then it's very difficult when it's not working, or you sort of feel that it's sort of slipped through your fingers, and you sort of had a whiff of something you thought could be great, and you can't quite capture it, and you've just got to work really hard to try and
actually. I had the most fun. I had a day. Do you remember that day with Timmy, and we went through the whole script, and I played all the other characters.
That was your dream,
and it really was. And Paul, it was just me, Paul, and Timmy, and just going through the whole thing. And Timmy wanted to do each scene again and again, and I was working with this great young, amazing, actor who was
what's
really
your Jim
enjoying
Carter
it.
like?
Well, depends, which line you're looking at. But it all came out like, I mean, exactly. And then you got to do Hugh Grant, and great fun, great day, best day.
You had me when you cast Deja Vu from Top Secret. It's Jim Carter's absolute peak, I think.
Is he in Top Secret?
He's Deja Vu.
I'm going to have to go back.
There you go. I'll do watch it. There was one part of your process that I think it was, I think it's a pair of you, that I think Alice Lowe talked about after Paddington 2, where she said that you show the film to a bunch of people and ask them individual questions. And I think it was the barbershop scene in Paddington 2, vulnerable at that point. That was one that you were asking people about. Now you're in like the clothes of like a 9-figure studio blockbuster. Which is like the elephant in the room to a degree. Are you still able to keep that bit of the process small? Are you still able to do things like that?
Yes, it's invaluable. And I think we want the finished product to feel like a sort of meticulously crafted clock, where sort of everything's sort of doing exactly what it should do. But there's a lot of iterations to get there. And I think we spent about almost a year and a half in post-production on this, so it was a sort of it was there were tough moments in there, and having really interesting talented people come and watch the film and tell you where it doesn't work is incredibly helpful. It's obviously more helpful if they can tell you how to fix it, but that happens too.
Yeah, and we have a bunch of trusted people who we've gone to for ages, so there's a shorthand of like, they'll go, this is your barbershop, this has got to go. Even though we kept the barbershop.
Well, the jury's still out on that.
What, you still want to go back and remove it from the
I'm out of time, sadly. Congratulations on your Wonka film, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I hope you get to make your Faraway Tree film. I hope you make your Fred Astaire film.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. You're such a well-researched man.
Thank you very much.
You're the most well-researched Simon in the room.
And that brings to an end my conversation with Paul King and Simon Farnaby. King's next project is indeed supposed to be a film about Fred Astaire, and Simon Farnaby has long been involved with an adaptation of Enid Blyton's The Magic Faraway Tree. I couldn't get any further information on how far they were up to with those projects, but hopefully not too far away. What I can tell you with more certainty is that Wonka is in cinemas the 8th of December, and it will be playing wide all around the world. You'll be hearing lots of it, I would imagine. But that all brings to an end this latest episode of Film Stories. As always, thank you for listening and thank you so much for your time. If I've not bored you completely, you can find more from me on Twitter at Simon Brew. I'm on Blue Sky as well. Film Stories is on Twitter at Film Stories, on Facebook at facebook.com/filmstoriesonline, youtube.com/Film Stories, and our website store.filmstories.co.uk is where you'll find our magazines, Film Stories and Film Junior magazine, as well as our Blu-rays. And if you go to filmstories.co.uk, that is updated every weekday with movie news, features, reviews, opinions, all that kind of stuff. We also do gaming and TV on there a little bit now as well. We're trying to be a clickbait-free movie and entertainment site, which is incredibly hard. So thank you to everyone who's supported us in trying to do that. For now, I'm going to go off and prepare your regular episode of Film Stories. I've got a few films to watch and a lot of writing to do. And so, until the next time, thank you for listening, thank you for your time, and please stay safe. Bye bye.